Hey guys, I just wanted to post really quick a video of my line progression on my pregnancy test, and I'll also show you my ovulation tests because I felt like I was always very confused, especially with my ovulation tests. I thought some were positive, but luckily I kept testing and then I would get an actual positive, and then, it would just be confusing on what was positive and what wasn't. So these are dried, so they are gonna look a little different than when they were fresh, but you'll get the gist of it. Also, I want to make a point that you shouldn't stress too much about line progressions. Coming from someone who had 2 chemical pregnancies this year, and my lines did not get darker, that's hard to do. I, of course, obsessed with this pregnancy about the line getting darker, and it's hard not to do, but I'll show you basically the HCG numbers, the difference between one to another. It's really not that big of a difference on the tests, but the HCG levels had, gone up 10 times by that. So anyway, let me show you what I've got here. Okay, so I'm going to start with these first. These were the Easy at Home ovulation and pregnancy tests. As you can see on cycle day 8, I thought that was a positive. Of course, these are dry, so take that, into consideration, but a positive is when the first line is as dark or darker than the second line. And again, this is dried, so it's hard to tell, but that is confusing because that does look like, sorry, my dog's moaning. That does look like, excuse me, could you not? That does look positive to me at first, but luckily I know my cycles and I know that I never ovulate that early. So I kept testing. The rest were clearly negative. And then on, that one started to look positive. I didn't track this one as well. That was probably on cycle day 16. This one right here. It started to look positive, and I was getting kind of confused. And then on cycle day 17, I clearly got a positive. That line is a lot darker than the second line. And then the next day, it still kind of looked positive. It wasn't as dark as the day before. So we made sure to BD on both of these days and probably the day after just to make sure that we catched it. And then the next day, it was negative, and that's when I stopped testing. And then I got my first positive. It's hard to tell, but on this day, and that was 9 DPO. And I do not know what happened to that test, but so that was 9 DPO with these two, or the top one, and then 10 DPO was the next two. And then I'm sure I took like 3, 3 this day. These say 10 DPO, but I wasn't sure if it was 10 or 11, and later we figured out that it was actually 10. And then these were 11. Daisy, Teak, stop. And then I go down to 12, 13, and 14. So these, they dry weird when they get darker. They have like a really dark line and then they fade. And I didn't get, with Easy at Home, I didn't get a darker line, a darker test line than control line until 19 DPO. And that's, let me go over here first. This is my first response tests. So this would have been 9 DPO. This first one, and again, these have dried, so take that into consideration. But I actually got very worried because I felt like my lines were not getting a lot darker. But then I had read that from box to box, the dye in the test can be different. So on June 7th, which would have been between these 2 days, my HCG was 83 at 12 DPO. So around these 2 days, I would have been, you know, closer to 200. And they really, I mean, from here to here, they don't look that different. Maybe right here, that one dried weird, like kind of spotty. But this test is what really made me sick all day, and I wish I would have never taken it because I had a blood draw this morning, you know, this day in the morning, and didn't get results till later that afternoon. And from the 10th to the 14th, really didn't look that different. And I was 19 DPO on this day, so I was expecting this test line to just take all the dye away from the control line. Well, to my relief, my HCG levels were 2,212 this day, and I had my blood draw like an hour after I took this test. So my numbers were in the 2000s, and this test doesn't look much darker than when it was probably 200. So, of course, I love line progressions, don't get me wrong. I was obsessed with them while I was trying to get pregnant and while I was getting, you know, faint positives. But always take into consideration that from box to box and test to test, the amount of dye in each test is going to be a little bit different and cannot be, you know, totally trusted, because I was literally sick all day thinking something was wrong because this test wasn't much darker than, you know, 4 days earlier. Anyway, so that's that's my piece, and I hope this helps someone. These are a mess, honestly, because I just taped them, but that's my line progression. And if you guys have any questions, leave a comment. If not, have a great day. Oh, and real quick, I forgot that these are the First Signal Walmart 88-cent tests. These were great. I really liked these, but it takes a long time for them to get darker. So I was 5 weeks and 5 days before they got super dark. But that being said, I was 9 DPO and I got that positive. So I felt like these were just as good, if not better, than the internet cheapies, and just as good as the Walmart or the First Response 6 Days Sooner. So anyway, I really liked these tests, and I'm glad I kept these two so I could see the line progression. Of course, I did freak out when the line wasn't constantly getting super dark, you know, until later. But again, everything was fine, and this pregnancy's gone great. So there's a line progression, and don't necessarily trust the, you know, line to line from each day. But anyway, there it is.